שמי יעל, ושמחה לראות שהרבה אנשים הגיעו למפגש הזה, מקווה שהוא ראשון מיני רבים. לפני שנתחיל, אני אציג לכם קצת המורה. צונג סונים, זה שמו, אבל כולם יכולים לקרוא לו סונים, לצורך בכל השם. כתבתי כמה מילים. כמובן הוא התחיל לתרגל בשנת 1990 והפך לנזר בשנת 1994. בשנת 2000 הוא חזר לאירופה ללמד, וב-2005 הוא התחיל פרויקט וונקונסה, שזה טמפל מנזר שהוא בונה מחוץ לבודפסט, מקום מאוד מאוד גדול. בעיקרון זה מקום מיוחד מינו באירופה. נועד גם לתרגל שם, גם לנזירים שיוכלו לבוא לחיות שם, כי אין כאלה מקומות באירופה. וזהו, בעיקרון זה הפעם החמישית שלו בארץ כבר. זהו, באופן כללי. Finished my little lecture. That's you.
Bow. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
It's a pleasure to see you all tonight.
Okay.
And the title for our gathering today is The Meeting of Traditions. And this may sound very interesting. Right at the beginning, I have to disappoint you. Originally, there are no traditions. How do we know that? Let me just quote a very interesting story from the Tang Dynasty, China, from Zen Master Joju. Zen Master Joju was a very, very great Zen master. He had a monastery with over 1,200 monks, and many times these monks asked for teaching. And rarely, but visitors could also enter the Zen master's room, of course with the presence of an attendant, and the Zen master gave them really tailor-made, personal, special teaching. And so it happened, and one day there was a visitor, a guest, in Zen Master Joju's, lineup, and he comes in, he bows to the teacher, and the first question was asked by the teacher. So, where do you come from? The visitor says, I come from the north. Really? You come from the north? Yes, sir. So go drink tea. The person bowed, received wonderful teaching. Next visitor comes. Also respectfully bows, and the Zen master asks him, where do you come from? I come from the south. Really? From the south? Yes, sir. Go drink tea. Visitor bows, received wonderful direct teaching. No more visitors. The attendant, who was witnessing all this, had a big question inside and just couldn't keep it and says, sir, can I ask you a question? Yeah. So, the first visitor was from the north. You sent him to drink tea. The second visitor was from the south. So you also sent him to drink tea. Why? The Zen master said, attendant. Yes, sir. Go drink tea. Okay? So that's about traditions, okay? Traditions, they are very interesting differences and varieties of the same thing. And this variety is necessary. Some of you heard during the preparation phase of this talk, variety is a key to survival. Why do we need so much variety, even within the Tibetan tradition, within the Zen tradition? Also the southern transmission lines, which we don't cover tonight so much in detail, the Theravada lineages. Why? For you, for each and every one of you. Because this point is very simple, but we need to experience this in 10,000 ways. This point, when you hear this sound, this hit, your mind returns to don't know. You have no thinking. Your mind returns to a state before dualistic thinking. We call that liberation from life and death. And if you truly attain this point and not just hear it, but experience it, then you are on the path. It doesn't matter what kind of robes the teacher is wearing, what kind of language the teacher is speaking, what kind of Asian supporting culture or background culture there is to the teaching. That's not important. What's important is that finally all of us would get it. So as we shop around in our spiritual shopping mall, we like certain things and we don't like certain things. We believe certain traditions are good and certain other traditions are not so good. That's how we begin. We begin to differentiate, to judge, to check, to analyze, and then we decide on something which is certainly and most wonderfully will take us to enlightenment. After you spent about 10-15 years really sincerely practicing in a tradition, you just realize how damn fool we are when we begin, which is correct. I mean, we have a lot of ignorant views, okay, when we begin, later more. So then you realize it's not dependent on the tradition, it's dependent on you. But at the very beginning, we all need our variety. We all need our own selection. We all need our special teaching. And because of this really clear truth, the variety of tradition was born, was created. It was created by us, human beings, so that we could experience the point of awakening and helping other beings in 10,000 different ways, so that at least one of them would work. Okay? Nature operates like that. Otherwise there would be no multitude of species and procreation and variety, etc., etc., etc. So our traditions are not different. But whether you use chopsticks or spoon or fork or knife, or just your bare hands in some parts of the world, the right hand, not the left hand. What matters is, did you get a full stomach? Did you take your food to your mouth? Did you ingest it? That's what matters. So in our Buddhist tradition, whether it's the northern, the southern, or the gradual, all of these are just terms. They do not refer to the essence of the path. But I would like to point out three important things which is everywhere, wherever you go, and you want to study the Buddha's Dharma, is the three precious ones: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. They really act like the three prongs of an object, or the three legs of a chair. If you have them, then this object is stable. Look at the tripod. It doesn't have 4 legs, it doesn't have 2 legs, more than 4, less than 2, it has 3. Why? Because with 3, it's stable, and there's no redundancy. How does that work in our Buddhist tradition? The Buddha is the teacher, the Dharma is the teaching, and the Sangha is the students. Since we are born into this body, which we all have, we feel ourselves as individuals. That's our first experience at the beginning of our adulthood, our individuality, that we are a distinct and separate I, with the name and with the form. Okay? Then we have the world. We are connected to the world, and we feel that somehow this world operates. We ask questions. Ever since we can talk, we ask questions. Of course, the adults work hard so that we don't ask so many questions, and they would use their own answers, but it's never really sufficient. But we want to know how the world operates. What is the law of the world? Because when we're born, what we can experience is that there's no user's manual to life. Many people have many pieces of writings, ideologies, religions, mythologies, history, whatnot, but there is no universally accredited and accepted manual to life and death. So people have many versions of the same story. But none of the versions are complete as you experience them first, from the books, from people. So what is really the operation of life and death? What is really the function of the universe? For that, we have to practice to discover the cause and effect relationship. And this cause and effect relationship, if you multiply them, that becomes the law. That becomes your experience of cause and effect, or karma. And when you digest this karma and process it and get some wisdom out of it, then it's dharma. Okay? So dharma is not special. Don't think it's written in the books. Don't think it's the property of some select people. No, the dharma is your wisdom. The question is, do you develop it? Do you practice clear mind? Do you practice clear observation? Do you practice the mind which digests all the phenomena, all the stimuli? If yes, then you develop dharma. You really perceive how this universe operates, how your mind operates. And the wonderful thing about the dharma, that it's not two. It's just one big set of rules, one big set of law. So there is no two kinds of dharma for you, for me, for other people. We basically operate in the same way as human beings. This world doesn't operate differently in Africa and in North Europe. Of course, when we have some volcanic ash, it behaves differently in the air, but you know. This world has one way of operation. Human beings operate deep inside in the same way, and although we have all different faces, we have different bodies, we have different emotions and thoughts, they work following the same rules. That's why all over the world, it's pretty easy to observe what makes people happy and what makes people suffer. They are different in details, but down at the deep structure, these rules are pretty much the same. And that's what the Buddha discovered. That's what the Buddha discovered when he became independent of his own culture, the yogi and Brahmin culture, and of course the Kshatriya culture which he was from, the warrior culture. And he didn't buy it. He tested it. And when he found his own culture insufficient, he made his own research. And when you do your own research, wow, what a joyful ride that is. I mean, he almost died a couple of times, but he got there, you know. He got to the awakening, which is still shining at us from the distant, 2,500 years. So that's why the Dharma is so important, because it's your own journey. It's your own discovery. What am I and how do I function as a human being? Why did we come here onto this earth? Why were we born? What is our true situation on this planet? What is our relationship to other beings? And what is our job as humans? So don't think that the Dharma as a teaching is the property of some culture or religion or people. No, it's the result of your own hard work. It's the wisdom that you distill. And since we all have the nature of awakening, we are all capable of seeing clearly and hearing clearly and thinking clearly and feeling clearly, everybody is capable of this kind of attainment. So when you attain your true self, then you start to perceive how we are, how this world truly is. What is the true cause and effect relationship between us? And then Dharma appears. At first people confuse Dharma with books. That's no problem. Somehow we have to begin. We begin with understanding. But then we have to proceed towards experience. Without practicing, no experience. Only dry cognition. But when you digest that, when you also process your karma, then you come to this point. So high-class thinking leads you to no thinking. This no thinking is clear like space, clear like a mirror. And in this mirror, everything is reflected. Okay? This point we just call substance, but originally it has no name, no form, no life, no death. Alright? But when you attain that, your mind becomes very clear and it starts to function like a mirror. Sky is blue, trees are green, birds are chirping outside. So that's the way it works. And when somebody's hungry, you give them food. Somebody's thirsty, you give that person drink. Now it sounds very, very simple, but we have to work for this. We really have to practice for this because we have so many ideas. We are attached to our own thoughts, our emotions, our past, present, and future. We have so many ideas about that. So basically there's nothing to learn. Like I said, originally no tradition, but same thing. Originally there's nothing to learn. But we really have to forget quite a lot. Okay? And when you do that, you become really a clear, simple, wise, and compassionate human being. It's not difficult. Usually, especially in this part of the world, people can think really well. But how clear is that thinking? How much do we identify with that? How much do we mix our emotions with thoughts? How much do we contaminate this moment with past, present, and future? That is questions that you have to answer for yourself. And if you see that your life has glitches, if you see that you experience suffering as well as make others suffer, then you know that the Four Noble Truths are still ahead of you. They are still a task for you. Because the Buddha laid this out very clearly, like the mind's doctor. He really pointed out what is the fact of suffering, the cause of suffering, the end of suffering, and the way to end suffering. That's the fundamentals of his Dharma. We call that the Four Noble Truths. And as he was teaching more, he got back to the point where he wanted to start, but it was too difficult for the students. It took him 15 years to get to the Prajnaparamita scriptures, or the wisdom sutras, wisdom scriptures. And then the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Flower Garland Sutra, says it in one verse. Not in 4 steps, like the Lotus Sutra earlier, but in one verse. If you want to understand the Buddhas of the past, the present, and the future, then consider this universe, or perceive this universe as created by mind alone. So this is one step. The Four Noble Truths are 4 steps, but it talks about basically the same thing. That we create this world into what is created. There are no other beings controlling us. We have quite a lot of kind of people here, other beings like animals too, below animal realm, above human realm. We have all the frequencies, all the life forms. Some of them we see, some of them we don't. That's all no problem. But we create this world together. There is no single entity controlling it. And once we clear that view, we see our own responsibility. And then we come to the third of the treasures, the Sangha. The Sangha is not just a group of practitioners. It's all sentient beings sharing this life with us. It's all beings sharing this planet together. That's our Maha Sangha, or Great Sangha. So if you look at our relationship, it's very easy to be nice to your family members. Sometimes even that is difficult, but it's very easy to be nice to them because you know them. You have been with them for a long time. It's much more difficult to have a correct relationship to somebody you have never met. It just bumps into you in the street. And also to those who may not even be human, like animals. So how do we keep a correct relationship to all beings? How do we not make them suffer and also not take suffering from them? Because it's equally wrong, okay? Both. So the Sangha is actually all beings with whom we have the same substance, but we have different karma and different bodies and different forms, different thoughts, different emotions, different sense of identity, different flags, different borders. All of these differences, although they go back to the same substance, we have to have correct relationship. And if you keep correct relationship, you don't suffer and you don't make others suffer either. That's how you can check it. In Buddhism, in the Buddhist path, you have proof. You don't have to believe anything. But your experience is what convinces you, nothing else. So if you act correctly, speak correctly, think and feel correctly, then you don't suffer and you don't make others suffer either. That's the check mark. So the 3 precious ones, Buddha, the individual, Dharma, the teaching, and Sangha, the group of sentient beings, they are there to help us. Because as we are born onto this planet, we follow this pattern. You feel yourself as I first. Then you see the world around you and you want to experience it as it is. And then you see other beings around you and you want to have relationship with them. Therefore, as we are human beings on this planet Earth, the three precious ones follow our pattern of existence. That's why they are helpful. That's why they do not seem artificial after you study them. And we can all use them very, very, very well. Okay? So much about introduction. Because there are two kinds of teaching. We have been through the less important kind of teaching, which is what I wanted to say. The second and more important kind of teaching is what you want to hear. And that comes out of your questions. So please be brave and feel free to ask any kind of question about practicing, life, whatever you like, so that this Dharma talk would be actually sharing the Dharma, and what you need to hear and what you want to hear would come forth. So, do you have any questions? Any kind? If you have no questions, then let me tell you what will happen. Okay, go.
So this is a question more about daily life for lay people. Someone wants to create a business for himself. What is the fundamental points that you see that would make this business harmonious and profitable, not just for him but for everyone around him? And what do you see as the main points of creating the business on them?
Well, you said the first and most important sentence. Somebody wants to create a business for himself. That's the problem. That's why it won't work. That's why it will have at best limited results. If people have just a little bit of wisdom, they don't create a business for themselves. They create it for a target group, if I may sound marketing. At least you create a business for the use of your family, or the use of your girlfriend, boyfriend, fiancé, spouse, parents, whoever. But if you really want to do big business, you create that for all beings. And the second thing is that once you realize that you don't create a business for yourself, but you definitely impact the world with that business, what kind of impact is that? So how do you impact the world and those beings who experience your business? What's the result? And that's what some companies forget when they externalize things. I mean, can you do like outsourcing with everything? You keep the profit and everything is just done by someone else, because that's the way corporate culture works. You know, I take the profit, you do the cleanup. Great. So that, you know, it doesn't work like that. So if we give up the limited view of business for himself or herself, then we really attain something. We call that correct relationship and also correct direction. And the next is the key point in Western view on business: profit. That's one of the biggest mistakes that people can have, that right away they want to make profit. Small or large, just monetary or also in kind, but profit is primary. That's also a wrong view. It's like this: you judge the human being by the fact how much blood you can take from him or her. That's profit-oriented approach. Okay? But if you take all the blood from a human being, that dies. So it's the same thing with business. You want to take too much profit out of it, the business dies. Or people around the business die. There's an old story from Greece. It's called the story of King Midas, M-I-D-A-S. This king had a magic touch that everything that he ever touched turned into gold. That's the best thing. I mean, hey, you can't even tax that. So anything you touch turns into gold. Take it to the bank, you're the richest person in the world. But of course, if you follow the story through, Even what you wanted to drink turned into gold. You cannot drink that. You can drink juice or tea or water, but you cannot drink gold. Same thing with food. You can eat falafel, you can eat Said's hummus in Accor, you can eat fantastic things, but you cannot eat gold. Same, all over the place, okay? So if we put profit as God above everything else, then everything turns into profit and human beings die. Other sentient beings also die. This whole planet also dies. That's the problem, okay? So, if you put profit to its right place, then it starts to function like anything else. And then money has its natural use in your life. So to ride from Tel Aviv to Ramat Gan, you take a car. To take a plane is justified if you travel like to Asia or to Europe. It's the same thing with profit. You need to reinvest, you reinvest. You have something to spare, you use it somehow. But one thing is important, don't freeze it. Don't try to make an I, my, me out of it. There are processes that is under your control, but it's not power, it's responsibility. Take it that way. You acquire a lot of wealth, you acquire a lot of financial power, that means you use other people's energy. That's your responsibility, how you do that. If you use it in the wrong way, many bad things will happen and suffering will appear. Okay? And it seems like very profitable industry, but the output is death. Think. We have life examples, okay? So, what is the role of profit? What is the role of money in the bank? If you really look at it from the wisdom of life and death and how nature functions, you see that everything follows some kind of cycle. Short cycle, big cycle, fully visible or partly visible, doesn't matter. Turn it around. So if we recycle plastic, if we recycle paper, if we also recycle our bodies over lifetimes, why would profit be an exception? Recycle it. Okay? And if you recycle it, then no problem. Put it to the place where it starts to work. Don't freeze it up with just possession.
Keep it in movement?
Keep it in movement. Don't want to appropriate it. Don't want to control it. Let it happen naturally, and let it happen for groups of people, not just for an individual. Let this process recycle the energy which we have. I mean, can you believe that you take one breath, say, that's mine, finished. You're dead in 5 minutes. So it's the same thing. When you freeze up assets because it's yours and only yours and you are not recycling it, of course then the risk factor increases. Because everybody tries to control and tries to be mine. So it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Recycle it. Don't possess it. Monitor the whole thing. Use it for a correct purpose, correct livelihood, is one of the Noble Eightfold Paths. And then it works naturally. And you don't see it, but you grow. The trees do not have a bottom line every month. But nature works. More questions? Yes, and then... Sure, it's your turn.
It's a bit embarrassing.
Go for it.
Okay, I have this persistent, you can call it a wrong view, that for stuff that I might do, I would judge it or think about it like that is not Buddhist enough, or that is not like Zen enough. Now I know this is really dualistic and really I sense that it's not, but I have problem addressing it in a way that sort of resolves it for me.
So, you have a girlfriend or wife?
not the moment.
Problem. You have to fix that. Okay? And then, when you get your spouse, fiancé, or beloved, then she will be woman enough for you, right? And everything else is fixed. Then Zen will be Zen enough, Buddhism will be Buddhism enough, and all that. So you have to have a sense of completion and happiness. And if you don't have that, then everything is missing something. Everything is imperfect. Everything is just, But the moment that your being feels complete, and the moment that you in a male body feels really like a man, then no problem. Then everything else is fixed. Do that. Next question. Otherwise, you will always feel frustrated. And the problem is not with Buddhism, you know that already. The problem is not with Zen. The problem is that something essentially is missing from your life. Alright? No one.
As you know, I'm a student for education, and during
my
studies,
I'm sorry.
many times when I go to the school I teach at, I see all kinds of things I really don't agree with. I mean, I really want to just run away or take a few kids with me and run away from them. But still I know that's not the correct action in that situation, because my question is, how do I do this together action and be in the situation and actually help without going against my partner?
First of all, you have to take an armchair trip. So when you're back home with Tom, you ask for half an hour of complete silence, don't talk to me type of meditation. You sit down in an armchair or you sit in meditation and you actually play this sentence to its very end. You just said something important. You feel like running away with a couple of kids, right? So that means you would create your own school. And if you create your own school, what kind of school would that be? And if you play this really to the very end, you would see all the imperfections that you disagree with in the school that you created. Don't fool yourself that you would create the perfect school. It would have already appeared. You're not the first who is frustrated and dissatisfied with the imperfection of a system. And one of the greatest kind of compromises, though necessary compromises, is to accept a human being as he or she is, and to accept the world as it truly is. And when you do that, then your clear mirror consciousness shows everything and everyone as they are. And then this sense of frustration and imperfection, and I can't fix this world, I can't fix this school, will decrease. Because then that means that you have fixed yourself. The moment you can accept people and things as they are, you have fixed yourself. It doesn't mean that you don't do anything to improve, but don't start on the foundation of imperfection, frustration, all these things. Start with this: how can I help? And if you start with how can I help, then the blame, then the guilt, and all these trips, they stop. That's why we have to fix our own consciousness. You know what this reveals, and this is not psychology, this constant frustration and imperfection reveals vulnerability, right? So if you're not vulnerable because your center is strong and your mind is clear, and you stop worrying, then these imperfections disappear. But what appears instead? Your job, your task. So it's really important to see that clearly. You go to a school to teach, and the kids are there to learn. That's it. Everything else is secondary. All the opinions, all the views, all the administration, what other people think, nada. It's not important. What is important is what you do and why you do it. And as long as you keep doing that, because your experience gives you faith that what you're doing is helping, then everything else is secondary. You know, when when the Buddha really attained enlightenment, he says, there's no way people would get it. It's too simple. It's just touching the tip of your nose. It's just too simple. And then the mythology just kicks in that the highest god from Tushita heaven came down and they had a chit-chat, you know. I mean, hey. So it doesn't work like that. But as mythology says, Brahma himself visited the Buddha and said, please, I mean, can you believe that the highest lord of the highest heaven comes down and actually starts to negotiate? It doesn't work like that. And said to the Buddha, please, 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 reconsider. There are people who have only a little dust over their eyes, and please teach them, because they will wake up. And then the great wheel of the Dharma in Rajagriha got turned. But we have to see a very clear human psychology behind this. What is most important? The most important is that you don't have your own idea about teaching this world. You are asked to do so. That's why the Buddha said, okay, I don't have to do this. But since I was asked, I do it. Mm-hmm. Okay? Let's see the underlying meaning in all these stories that seem to be magical or historical, somehow irrelevant. But what's the true use of it in the human mind, in our consciousness? Now, why am I quoting this story? Because you have to find the use of your teaching in the kid's mind. You already know, no matter how young they are, that you don't teach just culture to them or science or all these things. You shape their consciousness. You shape their mind. What kind of shape will they get in after the lessons is finished? Don't feel bad. You're at the beginning of your profession. So that's your way to go. Don't check your profession. Also, don't change it. You will meet the same karma everywhere, because it's your karma. The moment your karma gets spilled on the floor, you meet that. Okay? And you step into it big time. So, there's no need to change anything. But change your motivation and don't check. Don't check. Don't check. Okay, more questions? Please.
Can I ask about the 5 aggregates?
Yeah, 5 skandhas, 5 aggregates.
Yes.
You know everything about the 5 skandhas. Why ask me?
No. If I knew, I will not ask.
That's straight. That's very good. Yeah. So, can you explain the question?
You want me to in Hebrew? Maybe?
In Hebrew or in plain English?
In English.
Okay, so our wonderful host asked about the 5 skandhas or the 5 aggregates. And this, by name, I'll list them all so you have a grasp what that is. Is body, feeling, perception, impulses, consciousness. Now don't think that you know anything, but now you have 5 more concepts to think about. That's what's happening, okay? Let me put this into context for you, and once you realize the context, then they will start to make sense, okay? I'm starting to recite the Heart Sutra as we have it in our English translation in our school. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, Chenrezi in Tibetan, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, when practicing the deepest wisdom, perceived that all the 5 skandhas or aggregates are originally empty, and that made him free from distress and suffering. I didn't free you from that because I'm looking at you and it's even more confusing. I know that. But if you bear with the explanation, it will come back to a very simple point. So, the 5 aggregates or the 5 skandhas are the 5 building blocks of our personality, okay? So, we talk about body, which is the form, which has all these sensory organs, okay? So these are our gates, or in computer language, our ports to reality. So you watch a movie, you plug your eyes in. You listen to music, you plug your ears in. You touch something, you plug your skin in. You start to think, you are already plugged in. So these are the 5 building blocks of our personality. Just like This teapot has a round shape, a little spout, a top, and a handle. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this has only 4 building blocks, not 5. And without any of the 4, the teapot is not complete. So, when we have the 5 aggregates, you look at ourselves. The first is the form, as I said, with the senses or the ports. And what do? They relay feelings. They relay feelings. We feel hot or cold, we feel soft or hard, we feel pleasant and unpleasant. So the sensory data which is coming in through the ports, okay? That's number 2. Perception. We perceive that there's a car pulling out right in front. We all hear that. So we can reflect. These are the perceptions. And then, if the perceptions prompt us to do something, we have an impulse. For instance, you touch fire. It's very, very hot. And the signal is to move away. So the impulse is to save your body, because we have this built-in sense of survival. So the moment that our senses convey danger, and we perceive danger, then we have an impulse to terminate that danger. So form, feeling, perception, impulse. And the other is consciousness. We know all about this. We have a mind which can think, which can distinguish, which can remember, which can reflect. Now, if you use the metaphor of the teapot and you relate that or apply that to yourself, that you have a body. The body has feelings. Then we perceive all these feelings. Then we have impulses or willpower based on these feelings and perceptions. And then we have consciousness which knows all this. It's like going deeper from the exterior, like in an onion. It's an onion, first layer, second layer, third layer, fourth layer, fifth. Mind you, all these metaphors are imperfect. But through these imperfections, you will get an understanding which you will refine for yourself. Now, getting back to the Heart Sutra. So form, it says, is emptiness. And emptiness is form. That means your body has no self-nature. It doesn't exist by itself. Causes and conditions maintain the body. If we stop taking liquid, after 3 days we have serious problems. And after 9 or 10 days, especially if you're exposed, you can die. Food, little longer, 60, 65, 68 days, provided you have enough drink. But after 68 days, very few people would survive, even in hospital beds. So causes and conditions maintain the body. And when it's taken to the cremation place or the burial site, after a while, short or long, nothing remains. Nothing remains. Everything returns to its element. The energy is gone, the various parts, the water, the earth, the metal, the wood, all that returns to where it came from, to the next step. And there is no bodiness or body identity knocking at the door, okay? The body itself is gone, it's finished. It has transformed itself without a trace to something else, okay? Also, as it comes, as it appears, it starts at the material level from 2 cells. Venus and Mars, okay? 2 cells, and out of that, as the cause and effect relationship begins, comes the whole body. With information, with energy, with content, everything, okay? Before that, it was nowhere. Before that union of man and woman, it didn't exist. But it got started and then it exists until the causes and conditions provide for that. Now, if you look at this in the physical realm, you can really apply that to the other 4 aggregates or the other 4 skandhas. Your feelings are also subject to causes and conditions. They are also impermanent. They also don't have independent existence. It moves on and on and on, okay? Again, another trip in the armchair or meditation, whichever you like, and you can play this through. You can perceive all this. Then we get back to the Heart Sutra when Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva perceives that these 5 skandhas are all empty. I have just explained what is empty, that it's impermanent, subject to causes and conditions, and it doesn't have a soul or a self or an independent existence. This is really important. Okay? That means that we are free. Your body doesn't control you if you wake up. Your feelings don't control you if you wake up. Your perceptions, impulses, consciousness do not control you if you wake up. Okay? And that's the meaning of the Heart Sutra. And if you go on, then it's repeated from a different angle, from the angle of your sense of identity, that you are not your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, or the realm of eyes, or any realm of mind consciousness. We always identify with these. We identify with the body. We identify with the feelings. We identify with the perceptions, with the impulses and the consciousness. And because of that, because of this false identification, we suffer and we make others suffer also. Now, we don't have to do that. So the message of the Heart Sutra, which is the best kind of elucidation on the operation of the 5 skandhas, tells you how to become free. That's it. So the 5 skandhas are our important parts of our existence. But the transcendental wisdom tells you not to depend on it, because none of that is your true self. None of that is your true nature. So when you stop being identified with the 5 skandhas, when you do not attach to the 5 skandhas, then you are not controlled by the 5 skandhas, then you wake up. Okay? So, one last metaphor. You know how difficult it is to launch the space shuttle. But it depends on 2 things, among many others, but 2 major things. That all the clamps should be disengaged and there should be enough power.
Very easy.
Yeah, the same thing with your path. You have to apply enough energy into your practice, and you shouldn't be attached to anything. And it works. Okay?